Chapter 206. The two brothers looked at each other, and Qin Yu Hai did not hide it. The blood feud is absolutely irreconcilable. Our Qin family and the residents of the Prince of First Rank are irreconcilable, and this blood debt must be repaid. Even if you do not reclaim this debt, Prince Yu of the First Rank will definitely know that it was your Qin family who did it, so no matter what, you will go against the residents of the Prince of First Rank. I think that one must remove the roots when cutting the weeds. If one want to have no worries in the future, one must capture the entire residence of the Prince of First Rank in one fell swoop. Xin young lady's meaning is? Chun Yushan asked hesitantly. The sects in the pugilistic world have a wide range of connections, and all heroes are friends. Even though the residence of Prince Yu is noble, but in terms of strength, it is not difficult to exterminate the entire family. Exterminate the entire family. Ji Yushu was idly listening at the side, but when he heard to this point, he could not help but spurt out a mouthful of tea. The gaze that he looked at Shun Miao was one of astonishment. It was somewhat terrifying for a young lady to say the words exterminate the entire family with a calm expression. The Qin brothers were also startled. Qin Yushan sized up Shin Miao opposite, and a chill rose in his heart. He had seen many vicious and merciless people in the pugilistic world, but this young lady in front of him could be said to be one of the best. With one sentence, she did not leave anyone alive, and was extremely vicious. However, they also felt that Shun Miao's words were somewhat reasonable. As long as there was a survivor, a centipede would not die, and it would inevitably be traced back to the Jiangnan's Qin family. The matter of silencing is indeed not difficult. Chun Yushan smiled bitterly, but to go against the current emperor. As a brother, naturally he could not wait to hack Prince Yu into 1,000 pieces. They could also do this, but there were other people in the Qin family, women, children, old and weak. If the imperial family were to be implicated, one could not harm the entire Qin family. I have a way to let His Majesty not pursue this matter, as long as you have the guts to raid Prince Yu's old nest. Shin Miao said. You? Qin Yu Hai said, Shun young lady, we know that you are powerful, else the news that we have been searching for 3 years would not fall into your hands. But the imperial family matters are not that simple, and one would invite fire to oneself if one is not careful. Thinking that after I leave, you will also be able to find out my identity. I am the daughter of the formidable great general in the Ding capital's general residence. With this kind of status, do you think he has any say in the imperial court? The Chen brothers were stunned for a moment, and their faces were filled with astonishment. Most likely they did not expect Shun Miao to have such an identity, and then became silent again. They started their business in the Jianghu, and even though their family was wealthy, between the officials and merchants, the merchants were always below and could only watch from afar as they did not know the depth of it. With just a casual coaxing from Shin Miao, they were actually moved. Why do you want to help us? Chun Yu Hai asked warily. What benefit does it bring you to help us with all your might? You are so strange. Just now, you were blaming me for not wanting to help, and now that I am helping, you are doubting me. You don't understand. Shin Miao's sarcastic words made Qin Yu Hai somewhat annoyed. Qin Yushan waved his hands and looked at Shun Miao before smiling. Shin young lady is a sentimental person, but this matter is of great importance. If one were to implicate Shin young lady, not just to help you. Shin Miao said lightly, I also have a blood feud with Prince Yu residence. My Tangjia is now about to marry into Prince Yu residence and is also one of the people being tortured. If in the future you destroy the entire residence of Prince Yu, please spare my Tangjia's life. When the Chen brothers heard it, most of the doubts in their hearts dissipated, and they cupped their hands towards Shun Miao. As such, many thanks. Both of you can go and inquire about the Chun family's younger sister's news. After inquiring, do not act rashly. 3 days later at this place, I will talk to you in detail. Chapter 207. The Chen brothers nodded their heads and could hear the meaning of Shun Miao's words to chase them away, so they did not hesitate and stood up. Qin Yushan said, after finding younger sister, Qin young lady has done our Qin family a favor, and in the future if there is any need for the Qin family, the Qin family will naturally not decline. Many thanks for the matter this time. Finishing, he carried his sword and left in a hurry, most likely to search for the whereabouts of the Chen family's younger sister. Ji Yushu stared at Shin Miao. He thought that Shin Miao's performance that day was sufficiently unique, but did not expect that today she was still so surprising. The people of the pugilistic world were all arrogant, and the Qin family was considered a large family. Moreover, this was originally a transaction of money and goods, but with just a few words from Shin Miao, she became the Qin family's benefactor. The Qin brothers' attitude towards Shin Miao was also very polite. Just like what the brothers said, in the future if Shin Miao had any difficulties, there would be the Qin family's help. It was not an easy matter to climb up to the Qin family. Manager Ji, now we can talk about the transaction between you and me? Shin Miao looked at him. I have already thought about the conditions of that day. Ji Yushu pretended to touch his chin and put on a difficult look. Actually, this information of yours is too dangerous. If it is done successfully, then naturally everyone will be happy, but if one day it is discovered, my Fengxian pawn shop will not be able to open anymore and I, the shopkeeper, will also lose my head. As for all the servants, they will also lose their lives. So for this transaction, what you have to compensate is the Shin family and money, but what I have to compensate is a real life. Speaking of which, it is still my loss. Shin Miao glanced at him lightly and said, as such, the business cannot be done. I understand. Sorry for disturbing Manager Ji for so long. Farewell. Ji Yushu had not finished his planned words when he saw Shin Miao's face suddenly change and was about to leave. He was so scared that he did not want to pretend anymore and quickly said, Hey, I have not finished speaking. Why are the young ladies now so impatient? Shin young lady, even though I feel that this is very dangerous, but the first time I saw you, I felt that you and I are very fated. For a beautiful young lady like you, one think that there would be no reason for males to not agree to any request. I am a person who cannot bear to see a beauty wronged. If I do not do this business, one think that you will not be happy. In order to make you happy, I don't mind sacrificing my life. So, I'll do this business. In the secret chamber at the other end, after hearing Ji Yushu's mushy words, Gao Yang could not help but look at Xie Jingxing. Is he all right? He even dared to provoke such a vicious woman? This isn't Miss Peony. This is Miss Cannibal Flower. Xie Jingxing's lips twitched. Reckless. After listening to Ji Yushu's words, Shin Miao said calmly under Ji Yushu's ardent and passionate eyes, since that is the case, then tell Manager Ji about my plan. Ji Yushu immediately sat upright. All right. Shin young lady, please speak. Now the people of Ming Qi know that 10 years ago when His Majesty was attacked by an assassin, Prince Yu of the first rank sacrificed himself to save His Majesty from the assassin's hands and broke one of his legs. The assassin escaped. Not bad. Shin Miao smiled gently. The news that I want you to spread is very simple. That is that recently Prince Yu of the first rank executed a personal guard by his side. That personal guard coincidentally, other than being slightly older, he looked exactly the same as the assassin 10 years ago. This, Ji Yushu was stunned for a moment before suddenly pausing, and the teacup in his hands almost fell over. Manager Ji must definitely pass this news to the Emperor. Shin Miao smiled gently. Is this true? Ji Yushu asked tentatively. Real or fake? Manager Ji can think of ways to make it true. Shin Miao smiled. Chapter 208. You. Ji Yushu stared at Shin Miao and was unable to speak for a long time. He felt that this young lady who looked much younger than him was really a monster. The transaction is done, so I should leave. Shin Miao stood up. Manager Ji's actions must be faster. At least it must be done before the extermination of the entire prince of first-rank residents. After she finished speaking, she no longer looked at Ji Yushu and turned to leave. Hong Ling had been waiting outside for a long time, and seeing her come out, she knew that the deal was done and let her out again. In the secret chamber, Gao Yang was silent for a while before saying, I do not think that it is a good thing that the Shin family is so powerful. Now that there is more porridge than monks, I think that the Shin family cannot stay for long. It is up to me to decide whether to stay or not. Xie Jingxing lazily said, It is not bad to borrow the Shin family's hands to deal with that old dog Prince Yu. Perhaps one day the Shin family will deal with you like this. If they dare to, I do not mind to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Xie Jingxing's beautiful black eyes lit up. There is still no whereabouts of the thing? Gao Yang shook his head. On the day of the extermination, I will personally make a trip. Xie Jingxing sat up straight and played with the jade cup in his hands. I do not believe that it can still fly. You really think that the entire Prince Yu residence can be exterminated? Xin Miao's plan is good, but when it comes to doing things, there will always be accidents. Accidents? Xie Jingxing chuckled, and his half-closed peach blossom eyes were as intoxicating as wine, but under the long eyelashes, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, like a cat catching a mouse. Ever since I met her, she has never had any accidents. Time always passed especially fast. The general residence was a very strange residence. Before anything happened, everything was naturally covered up and everyone was happy and happy. From the relationship between the first few households, at least from the outside, it looked good. Until a big fire burned down the Shin family's ancestral hall and burned away the trust that Shin Xian and wife had for the second and third household. The relationship of the first household was at least stiff. Now that Shen Qing had lost her innocence and was going to marry Prince Yu of first rank, any sensible person would know that this was not a good thing. However, Chen Roqiu and Shan Yu were still happily busy preparing for Shan Qing's marriage. Even though it was a marriage bestowed by the imperial family, it was not worthwhile to put on such a happy attitude for one's own family. If one looked at it this way, it would seem too cold. Ren Wanyun quarreled with Shen Gui because of Shin Qing, and old Shin Foreign favored Shen Gui and was dissatisfied with her as a daughter-in-law, and did not say that she would return the power to manage the household to Ren Wanyun. Since Chen Roqiu was valued by old Foreign, naturally she became more attentive. Ren Wanyun was furious in her heart and could not help but show her resentment towards old Shin Foreign. Old Shin Foreign was even more ruthless and directly kept Shin Yuanbo in Rongjingtang, not letting Ren Wanyun see him. At this point, Ren Wanyun had become a solitary person in the huge Shun residence. Even her former servants, some of them had secretly thrown their lot in with Wan Yinyang, who was currently in the limelight. In Kai Yun Yuan, Ren Wanyun was either cursing loudly or hugging Shin Qing and crying bitterly, looking somewhat crazy. None of this had anything to do with the West Garden. Shin Xian and wife consciously kept a distance from the second and third household, and their attitude was neither hot nor cold. Through this matter, they most likely saw the second and third household's cold-hearted nature. At least from Shan Xian and Luo Shuiyan's point of view. If everything that happened to Shin Qing were to fall on Shin Miao, both of them would not swallow the insult and would fight for justice for Shen Miao, even if they had to risk their lives. In addition, Shen Miao was much more sensible now, and her attitude towards them was not as distant as before, making them feel that it was worth it to ask Emperor Wen Hui for the grace of staying in the Ding capital. In the room, Bai Lu said, "Eldest young master just picked a few precious jewelry for young lady and also gave young lady a few banknotes. This servant has placed them in the box for young lady." Chapter 209. Xin Miao nodded her head. Ever since Shan Xiao knew that she went to the Feng Xian pawn shop, he thought that she was short of money to spend and would pick some exquisite things from the palace to send over or directly send money over. He even said to her, "Younger sister, if you do not have money, then tell older brother and older brother will give it to you. Do not go to any pawn shop. I am Shan Xiao's younger sister. Why would she need to go to a pawn shop to exchange for money?" Xin Miao was too lazy to explain to him, and adding on to the fact that money was not a hot thing, so she gladly accepted it. It had been 2 days since she met with the Chen brothers, and tomorrow, she would make another trip to the Feng Xian pawn shop. She did not know if Qin Yushan and Qin Yuhai had inquired about the whereabouts of the younger sister of the Shen family. The life of the Shan sisters was undoubtedly very pitiful, and when she learned of this news, it was in the past lifetime. She married Fu Xiuyi, and when Fu Xiuyi just ascended the throne, he was very impatient with Prince Yu. Fu Xiuyi was after all not Emperor Wen Hui, and Prince Yu did not save his life. As an emperor who had just ascended the throne, it was not something to be happy about to have a royal uncle who would only find trouble for himself. Jiangnanzhou province's Chen family finally learned of the Chan sisters' bitter experience 3 years later, and at that time they also assassinated Prince Yu. These two brothers were rather hot-blooded and directly crippled Prince Yu's other leg, but it was a pity that Prince Yu was able to keep his life. Prince Yu was furious and wanted to trace who it was, so he threw this difficult problem to Fu Xiuyi. To investigate clearly the assassin, it was extremely difficult, but Fu Xiaoyi's advisors were all over the world, and among them were people from the pugilistic world. Someone told Fu Xiaoyi about the Feng Xian pawnshop's private business. Fu Xiaoyi himself did not come forward and sent people to spend a lot of money to buy the news of the assassin who assassinated Prince Yu. It was strange to say that the Feng Xian pawnshop accepted this business, but it was not successful, and said that they did not receive any news. The Feng Xian pawnshop did not receive it, but Fu Xiaoyi himself found it out. Thus the Jiangnan's Chen family indeed ushered in a disaster. In this lifetime, Xin Miao had long thought of this matter, and when Prince Yu had other thoughts about her and started the transaction with Ren Wanyun, she had already laid out such a trap. Everything was moving according to her chessboard. Xin Qing being humiliated, Ren Wanyun's counterattack, and even Shan Qing's accidental pregnancy were all in her plan. Naturally, at the returning banquet, pregnancy was involved and Shan Qing wanted to marry Prince Yu, making Prince Yu furious. Prince Yu of the first rank would put all his energy on her, thus the Chen family could take this opportunity to secretly plan. As for the royal family, it was even easier. In fact, Shan Miao always had a guess that with the Feng Xian pawnshop's ability, it was possible that in the past life they did not find out that it was the Chen family who assassinated Prince Yu. But Fu Xiaoyi's people did not reply to any news. Perhaps it was deliberately done by the Feng Xian pawnshop. Could it be that the Feng Xian pawnshop had some discord with Prince Yu? So previously in the loft of the Immortal River, Shen Miao deliberately probed Ji Yushu and said the words exterminate the entire family. Ji Yushu's expression was stunned, but was not carefree. Obviously, there was no grudge between Ji Yushu and Prince Yu residents. However, the intuition of someone who had died once was terrifyingly accurate. Ji Yushu's reaction not only did not dispel Shen Miao's guesses, but also made her have another suspicion in her heart. If that was the case, everything could be explained. Perhaps the master behind the Feng Xian pawnshop was not Ji Yushu. Who was the person behind it? Shen Miao could not think of it. She thought that she was an empress in the past lifetime and had followed by Fu Xiaoyi's side. So all these big and small secrets were all grasped in her hands. But now it seemed that the depth of the water was much more dangerous than she imagined. But no matter what, Prince Yu residence's doors must be exterminated and Prince Yu's life must be taken. As for Shan Qing, naturally she should live a life worse than death. In the past lifetime, Shan Qing had seen her in prison, so in this lifetime, she wanted to return the favor. Shuangjiang carried the flower pot as she walked in and smiled. Yesterday the sun was very strong, so this servant took the flower pot out to bask in the sun. Young lady said that it would snow these few days, and this servant did not believe it, and wanted this servant to use an umbrella to cover it. Who knew that it would snow early in the morning today? Luckily, it was young lady's preparation. Otherwise, these few pots of flowers would be miserable, and this servant would have caused trouble. Speaking of which, young lady seems to like to make these preparations. Bai Lu smiled. To prepare things early and think of the possibility of something going wrong early. Every time when it comes to the critical moment, we would be able to pass it easily. Young lady's temperament is very steady and very good. Shen Miao smiled gently and her bright eyes reflected the scenery outside, as firm as a rock. She said, "It is nothing. I just do not like accidents." Chapter 210. A day's plan always passed very quickly. On the third day when Shen Miao came to the Feng Xian pawnshop, the Chen brothers had already waited for a long time. Compared to before, both of them seemed to have changed a lot. Especially Chen Yushan, that kind of forthright aura that was like a green mountain had disappeared and was replaced by a deep haze. Shen Miao swept a glance at Chen Yushan and Chen Yuhai and had an idea in her heart. Presumably, these two people had already inquired about the Chen family's younger sister's news. Perhaps they had even seen it with their own eyes. To personally witness one's own brothers falling into such a miserable situation, for the people of the pugilistic world who were decisive in killing, it would be a great stimulation. Otherwise, in the previous lifetime, the Chen family would not have gone to assassinate Prince Yu without a care for the consequences. Shun young lady. Chen Yuhai spoke first. Previously, Shin young lady said that the imperial family would not be able to trace the Chen family. Is it possible to tell us two brothers? Ji Yushu looked at his own teacup, as if he could see a flower in it, but he deliberately did not look at Shen Miao. Shen Miao sighed. Naturally, I also want to help, but like what was said before, in this way, the risk that I am taking is also great. From a certain point of view, the Shen family and your Qin family are tied on the same boat. If anything goes wrong, the Shen family will also suffer. Chen Yushan paused and said, I know that this trip is somewhat difficult, so, if young lady is willing to help, half of my Chen family's business will be given to the Shen family. When the words were said, even Ji Yushu could not help but look up at Chen Yushan. The Chen family was the wealthiest in Jiangnan, and Jiangnan had been a fertile land since ancient times. The Chen family's money was more than the imperial family, so now that they took the initiative to give out half of their business to the Shen family, it was tantamount to adding wings to a tiger. When Shen Miao heard it, she could not help but be somewhat absent-minded as she looked at Chen Yushan's pleading face. The Chen family sisters were tortured, and in order to take revenge, the Chen family was actually willing to pay such a price. They clearly knew that even if she took action, she would not be able to sit back and relax. Even so, they were still willing to gamble. This could only show the position of the Chen sisters in the Chen family's heart. In her previous life, she was trapped in prison and was isolated and helpless in the inner palace. If the Shen family was still around at that time, would her father, mother, and elder brother also save her at all costs? Miss Shen? Chen Yushan reminded when he saw Shen Miao in a daze. Shen Miao recovered to her senses and smiled gently. Half of the family business is fine. I am helping you with this, but it is not because of your family business. It is nothing more than to form a good relationship. In the future, if there is a need for your Chen family, I hope that you will not decline. Secondly, I also have enmity with the residents of Prince Yu, and if the residence of Prince Yu is not destroyed, there will be a day when trouble will come. She looked at Chen Yushan. Now we are all on the same boat. Chen Yushan looked at Shen Miao, who was in front of him. Her eyes were clear, and her tone was sincere. It was as if every word that she said was powerful and could be done. From the first time they met until now, she did not behave like a budding girl. Chen Yushan couldn't help but think that if the Qin clan sisters had the temperament and ability of the young woman before him, they wouldn't be in such a miserable state now. Thinking of the Chan sisters, Chen Yushan's slightly better mood immediately turned gloomy again. He said, What is young lady Shen's method? You do not need to ask about the imperial family side for the time being. It will be better after a period of time. In addition, if you want to take action, it is best to do it next month. Next month in the residence of Prince Yu will marry my Tangjia, and on the second day of the marriage, everything will be lax. At that time, you can take action early in the morning and it will be foolproof. Chen Yushan wanted to say something, but at the end he shook his head. How can you end the imperial family side within a month? Shen Miao looked at Ji Yushu, who was drinking tea, with a smile that was not a smile. You do not need to worry about this. The most urgent matter is to gather men and horses. After a pause, she then continued to speak. Prince Yu residence is not small, and you must first understand the layout. On the day of taking action, other than my Tangjia, after saving the person, you must cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Chapter 211. Don't worry, we brothers know, Qin Yuhai said. I don't know what is the rule of exterminating a family in the Jianghu. What I mean by exterminating the weeds by the roots means that women, children, young and old, servants and concubines are not to be spared. The entire Prince Yu residence will completely become a tomb. Chen Yushan and Chen Yuhai were both stunned. Chen Yuhai frowned. Even servants and concubines? Most of those concubines are pitiful people that Prince Yu captured. Shen Miao sneered. A centipede dies but never falls down. If young Master Chen wants to be merciful, you will only harm the Qin family, and my Shen family will also be implicated. She spoke coldly. After a moment, Chen Yushan nodded. We won't leave anyone alive to drag you down. This is very good. Shen Miao said. Then wish both of you to take revenge and wash the residents in blood. After chatting with the Chen brothers for a while longer, the Chen brothers stood up and took their leave. After they left, Jishu finally opened his mouth to speak. Shen young lady, you are so young but seem to know a lot of things. Just now I could see clearly that the Chen brothers are at least experienced and knowledgeable people, and actually followed your arrangements. Shen young lady, It is the first time that I have met such an intelligent and beautiful female like you. One do not know if there will be a chance in the future to go for an outing with you in the suburbs in spring, admire the lake in summer, and enjoy the boat in late autumn. He was still saying it well at the beginning, but the more he said it, the more outrageous it became. He was like a lecher who took liberties with a good young lady. Manager Ji, Shin Miao asked, "Don't tell me you just wanted to tell me this?" Ku. Ji Yushu cleared his throat. "In fact, I only want to tell Shin young lady that the news is already done and has been sent to the palace. One think that not long later, Shin young lady's desired result would be achieved." Shin Miao's heart was slightly shocked. Even though she knew that the Fengxian pawn shop had the ability, she did not know that the other party's actions were that fast. Presumably, there would be people in the palace who would receive them, else to quietly infiltrate the palace. One feared that it would take a lot of effort. This Fengxian pawn shop's water was also very deep. She didn't hide her deal with the Chen brothers just now because she knew it was impossible to hide it. Many thanks to Manager Ji. Shin Miao's eyes drooped down. After the matter is completed, the promise with Manager Ji will be kept. Ji Yushu was silent for a moment before asking in a rare serious tone, "Shun young lady, this one has a matter that does not understand. Go ahead." Shin young lady is using the Shun family as the price to do business with me. Are you not afraid that there will be a day when I want the Shin family to do dangerous things and push the Shin family to the cusp of the wind and waves? This deal would not be worthwhile. After saying that, Ji Yushu stared at Shin Miao and paid attention to her expression. Shin Miao did not even blink as she lightly said, "Rather than worrying about future difficulties, it is better to worry about the present problems. If that day really comes, it can only be said to be the fate of my Shin family." Ji Yushu was somewhat puzzled. Really? It's fake. In the secret room, Xie Jingxing listened to the movements coming from the side and said lazily, "Only Yushu that fool would believe her words." Gaoyang said, "This girl's deceiving skills are already at the point of perfection. How would Yushu be her opponent?" "No need to worry," Xie Jingxing said unhurriedly. "Once on my boat, it would not be that simple to get down." When Shin Miao got up to bid farewell to Ji Yushu suddenly said, "Oh right. Shin young lady, previously you wanted me to inquire about that young lady Lu Ying. There seems to be news of her whereabouts. If Shin young lady is anxious, perhaps there would be a result in these few days." However, Shin Miao's reply made Ji Yushu stunned for a moment. Shin Miao said, "No rush. Manager Ji can slowly search. I will also slowly wait." Chapter 212. After she left, Ji Yushu then shook his head and said as he walked into the room, "Really a woman that is more unfathomable than young lady Xiao Yao. At least young lady Xiao Yao would be happy to gift pearls, but this one, could it be that she would be happier to gift heads?" He shuddered and quickly walked into the room. In the palace, in the emperor's study, the memorials on the table were piled up high. Emperor Wen Hui sat in front of the table, and the memorials were spread out, but he did not even take a look at them. He was already in the prime of his life and was about to enter his 60s. Even though he was still hale and hearty, there were spots of white at his temples. The matters of the world were mostly just a reincarnation, and there were times when he was young and full of vigor. Even though he was now filled with lofty aspirations, the way everyone looked at him was that of a tiger that was gradually aging. There would always be a new tiger that would inherit his position. At this moment, Emperor Wen Hui's expression was heavy. As he grew older, he became thinner and his skin was so loose that it seemed to stick to his bones, showing a strange old age. He spoke in a hoarse voice, and one could vaguely hear the monstrous anger in his voice. Number 11 really killed an assassin that looked exactly the same? The two black-clad men standing in front of him said, "Reporting to your majesty, yes. The person that was caught had been tortured. In addition, the trusted aide of His Highness Prince Wen that was caught in the residence of Prince Wen also personally admitted that Prince Wen had executed a masked guard a few days ago." Emperor Wen Hui closed his eyes and suddenly raised his hand. The paperweight on the table flew out and broke into several pieces on the ground. After a moment, he then sneered. Number 11. Jean had still underestimated him. There were many eyes and ears in the palace. The imperial concubines, officials, and even the Empress. These eyes and ears were all to survive in the palace, and whoever had more information would have the first chance to win. The Emperor was no exception. Only when his eyes were everywhere would the dragon throne be more stable. At the beginning, he accidentally heard from his eyes that Prince Yu had killed an assassin that looked exactly the same as the previous one. Emperor Wen Hui did not believe it. The imperial family's feelings were cold, and he had stepped on the corpses of his brothers to sit on the emperor's throne. Leaving behind Prince Yu, who was ranked 11th, was because Emperor Wen Hui always remembered that dangerous night when Prince Yu used his body to block the danger and was drenched in blood to save his life. Emperor Wen Hui often thought that for so many years he treated Prince Yu well, not only because of the kindness of that leg, but it also represented that Emperor Wen Hui still had kindness. Now that he was an emperor, everyone's feelings for him were no longer pure. Even his sons were scheming against him. But Prince Yu of the first rank was able to remind Emperor Wen Hui that in this world, there was still a person who would disregard his own safety to block the sword for him, and he still had a personal disciple. But now, it was like a huge joke. It seemed that the scene at that time was a play that was arranged by this personal foot, and even Emperor Wen Hui suspected that the crippled leg of Prince Yu was fake. What did Prince Yu want to do? Plotting for the throne? Usurpation? There were so many records in the history books of concealing one's strength and biding one's time. And in one day one's rebellion, Emperor Wen Hui only felt anger and humiliation from being deceived. When one was betrayed by a trusted person, the trust would be withdrawn, and not only that, the suspicion would intensify. The people of the imperial family were naturally suspicious, and previously they did not suspect Prince Yu of the first rank because of his sincerity, but now that sincerity had become fake, the seeds of suspicion of the imperial family immediately grew into a towering tree that no one could shake. Send people to guard the residence of Prince Yu. Jin want to see what tricks he wants to play. Gao Gonggong lowered his head and looked at his eyes and nose as he silently looked at his toes, as if he did not hear the anger of the emperor. It was just that he sighed in his heart. Troubled times, troubled times. Chapter 213. The days passed by, and in the peaceful Ding capital, it was as if nothing had happened. As the end of the year approached, everyone was busy preparing for the New Year's goods, and even the poor families seemed to be filled with a faint joy. However, no matter how happy the days were, there would be people who were not happy. In the palace, Prince Li and Prince Xiang were walking in the garden. In Prince Li's faction, Prince Xiang and Prince Cheng's forces were weak, and they bowed their heads to Prince Li, and their attitude was very respectful. Compared to the Crown Prince's steadiness and the Prince Zhou and Prince Jing brothers' sharpness, Prince Li walked the path of moderation. He was not the most outstanding, and his consort mother was not the most favored, but he was extremely slick in bribing everyone up and down. No matter if it was the courtiers or brothers, they were willing to give him some face, but in private, he was an out-and-out smiling tiger. Sixth older brother. These days one heard that imperial father is very cold to royal Shu. Prince Xiang said. You also heard it. Prince Li smiled. When he smiled, there were small wrinkles at the corner of his eyes, and he looked very easygoing. His attitude was also very easygoing as he chatted with Prince Xiang. Imperial father had always valued royal Shu. These few times royal Shu had a request and entered the palace a few times, but imperial father actually rejected it with the excuse of being busy. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that imperial father deliberately left royal Shu hanging. Emperor Wen Hui was extremely benevolent towards Prince Yu. In the beginning, Emperor Wen Hui had a favored consort who offended Prince Yu, and that favored consort's family was quite powerful. Emperor Wen Hui did not say a word and banished the favored consort into the cold palace. He also publicly warned everyone. 11 is Zhan's brother, and to be disrespectful to him is to be disrespectful to Zhan. It was because Emperor Wen Hui agreed to almost all of Prince Yu's requests that this sudden change in attitude was noticed by everyone. But why is this so? Prince Xiang was puzzled. What did royal Shu do to anger imperial father? But for so many years, even if royal Shu overstepped his bounds, imperial father would not blame him. Chapter 214. Imperial father would definitely not let royal Shu marry Shun Miao, But this time Imperial Father did not directly explain it to Royal Shu, and instead avoided meeting, as if it was a warning. Most likely it is that one's patience has been worn out. Princely smiled bitterly. It is better for both of us not to talk about these as it has nothing to do with us. These days Imperial Father does not look very happy, so one must not stand in front of others. Sixth older brother is right. Prince Xiang nodded his head. After both of them left, a person slowly walked out from the depths of the garden. It was Prince Ding, Fu Xiu-yi. He stood in the garden, and it was obvious that he had heard the conversation between Prince Li and Prince Xiang. He looked at the back of the two leaving figures and muttered thoughtfully, "Shun Miao?" At the top floor of the Lin Jiangxian's pavilion, Ji Yushu finished reading the letter in Gao Yang's hands and burned it in the burning charcoal pile. The news had already spread out, and Emperor Wen Hui was also suspicious of the old dog. This time the old dog had lifted a rock to smash his own feet and did not know it himself. Ji Yushu was somewhat rejoicing in others' misfortune. Gao Yang shook his head. It is better to be careful. One cannot make any mistakes now. I know. Ji Yushu touched his nose. What is third older brother Xie busy with recently that one cannot see him? Which day is he not busy? Gao Yang suddenly sighed. One do not know if it is right or wrong to follow his temper. I believe in third older brother Xie. Ji Yushu said, third older brother Xie's ability is so great, so what are you blindly worrying about? He had planned for so long, and even if he could not succeed, it would not be a problem for him to escape unscathed. Gao Yang, you are just thinking too much. You look at our third older brother Xie. Even if there are many things in his heart, he can still live freely. This is what a man should be. Ji Yushu was obviously Xie Jingxing's loyal follower, and his words were filled with admiration towards Xie Jingxing. Gao Yang rolled his eyes at him. Bootlicker? Who is Bootlicker? Moreover, one need to see who the other party is and if it is worth it. He looked at the other in disdain. For example, you. Even if you kneel down and beg me, I will not do it. Gao Yang smiled gently. Is that so? Then don't come to me for medicine in the future. Even if you beg me on your knees, I won't prescribe it for you. Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment before immediately changing the topic. Actually, in the past I felt that the youths in the Ding capital were all embroidered pillows. Good to look at, but not useful. Only third Xie older brother is a man. But now I admire another person, and feel that other than third Xie older brother, there is someone else in the Ding capital who is considered to be a young hero. Oh, you even have someone you admire. How refreshing, Gao Yang said indifferently. Who is it that can enter your discerning eyes? Xin family's young lady Xin Miao. Ji Yushu slapped his thigh. Damn it. I have never seen such a courageous female before. They even dared to scheme against the imperial family. Moreover, to Prince Yu residence, that is the residence of a first prince, they would wipe them all out. That was before you saw it. Gao Yang snorted coldly. Previously, Shan Miao burned down her own ancestral hall and even dared to gamble with her own life. At that time, Gao Yang felt that Xin Miao was really a lunatic. These people were used to planning everything, and when they make a move, they would be sure to kill. At first glance, Gao Yang saw this kind of reckless way of doing things. He was certain that Shan Miao would not be able to live for long under this kind of reckless way of doing things. He did not think that in the end it was him who made a mistake. Every time it seemed to be reckless. At the end she would be the winner. Gao Yang sometimes felt that it was very strange. These kind of people would see themselves as exquisite porcelain, and unless it was a last resort, they would not risk their lives against others as the other party was not worth to use their own life to fight. On the other hand, Shun Miao was at the other extreme. She treated herself as the hardest rock, and the people who went against her were like porcelain. She didn't seem to have lost anything, but those porcelain that went against her were all broken into pieces. Chapter 215. Not everyone had the courage to treat themselves as a stone, and because of this, Gao Yang's heart felt that Xin Miao was more dangerous. And for an enemy that could grow up, the best way was to strangle her before she matured. It was just that. Gao Yang was somewhat uncertain of what Xie Jingxing's thoughts were. It was impossible for Xie Jingxing to not see the variables on this girl. If Xin Miao became an obstacle in their plans, it would only spoil the big matter. She had such brave deeds before. Jiu Shu said in surprise before nodding his head. It is normal for the daughter of the formidable great general to be more valiant. Even though she did not have martial arts and was not raised by Shinexien, with this temperament, no one would dare to bully her. Seeing that Gao Yang was somewhat lost in thought, Jiu Shu suddenly thought of something and continued. Speaking of which, this time even though I was the one who created the news about the imperial family matters, but everything was done according to Shan Miao's plans. Now thinking about it, she was really somewhat scary. One did not know what happened to Prince Yu, but these days he seemed to have lost his head from anger and actually told Emperor Wen Hui that he wanted to marry Shen Miao. He clearly knew that Shin Xian had military power in his hands, and whoever married Shen Miao would become a person with ill intentions in the eyes of the emperor. Yet Prince Yu actually made such a mistake. Moreover, Emperor Wen Hui really suspected to the end, and if he added a little more fire, one feared that even if Prince Yu died, Emperor Wen Hui would not even blink his eyes. In this way, would it not be convenient for the Qin family to handle things? Shen Miao's plan was interlinked, and there was not a single mistake in the calculations. Because she is a person without accidents, Gao Yang was somewhat rueful. Xie Jingxing was right. Every time Shen Miao did something that seemed dangerous, at the end it was exactly the same as what she wanted to achieve. In her plans, there were never any accidents. Gao Yang mischievously thought. If there was a day that he could see Shen Miao panicking and being dumbfounded because of an accident, one did not know how happy it would be. In short, I think that this Shen Miao is a person worth befriending, Jiu Shu said seriously, adding to the fact that I see her appearance. One think that after a few years, she will become a beauty. How can I, Jiu Shu, miss such a smart and beautiful female? I've decided. I'll put her on the same level as Miss Peony in my heart. From now on, aside from Miss Peony, she can also be considered a close friend of mine. Gao Yang simply turned his head away and didn't want to look at this fool anymore. And the confidant that Jiu Shu spoke of was picking and choosing in the room. Younger sister, are you picking so many things to add to Xin Qing's dowry? Xin Xiu scratched his head and asked. Shen Miao picked out a portion of the things that the emperor had bestowed upon her, and one did not know what she was looking for. Finally, she picked out a jade pillow that was very smooth and cold to the touch. Even if it was placed, it would give off a sparkling jade light and was very beautiful. Could it be that younger sister wants to give this to Xin Qing? As the day of Shan Qing's marriage approached, everyone in the Shen family began to worry about Shan Qing's marriage. A few days ago, Shen Yu asked Shan Miao what to give to Xin Qing as a dowry, and coincidentally Shan Xiu heard it. But seeing that there was no movement from Shan Miao, one thought that she finally remembered the matter today. This? Shen Miao picked up the jade pillow and shook her head. No? Oh. Xin Xiu asked. Does younger sister want to use it yourself? This jade pillow looks good. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down. This jade pillow was called the ice silkworm pillow. In the previous lifetime when she entered the palace, it was stuffed into her dowry box by Shin Xian. Afterwards, she became the Empress, and Mei Foren was deeply favored by the emperor. One day, she said that she was not feeling well and had some headaches and insisted on using this pillow. At that time, the ice silkworm pillow was given to Wan Yu, but Wan Yu did not agree and quarreled with Mei Foren, causing the pillow to break. Fu Xiu severely punished Wan Yu, and after a while, the news of the Xiong Nu's marriage came. Now thinking about it, it was all an old dream, but it still pierced through one's heart. Younger sister? Xin Xiu saw that Shen Miao did not speak and asked worriedly. This is for me to give to others. Shen Miao said, as for eldest sister's dowry, if eldest brother has time, then help me pick one. If eldest brother does not have time, it is the same to let Gu Yu buy it. Her words were cold to Shen Qing. Oh, Xin Xiu answered slowly. It was only when Shen Miao walked out of the room that he smacked his head. Silly. I forgot to ask younger sister who to give the pillow to. Outside the room, Jingzhe also asked, who is young lady giving the pillow to? A friend. Since there would be a need for the Chen family in the future, one must express it. Kindness and small favors, sending charcoal in snowy weather, one would be able to obtain loyal allies. She learnt the art of controlling people bit by bit from Fu Xiu. Calming one's mind was undoubtedly a good thing for the Chun family's younger sister whose mind was in disorder. Chapter 216. Time flew by, and in a blink of an eye, it was the 8th day of the 12th lunar month. The 8th day of the 12th lunar month was an auspicious day, suitable for weddings and funerals. It was also the day that Prince Yu residence, which had been silent for many years, would marry a Wang Fei. After Prince Yu had been a widower for many years, Prince Yu residence finally welcomed a new mistress. However, everyone knew that this was not something to be happy about. Just like the previous Prince Yu's Wang Fei, who knew when this happy event would turn into a funeral. The target that Prince Yu residence was marrying was the D-daughter of the Shun family's second household in the Ding capital, Shunqing. There were 3 D-daughters in the formidable great general's residence. Xin Miao was famous for being an idiot, Xin Yu was famous for her talents, and Shunqing could be considered as beautiful, generous, capable, and intelligent. In the end, such a good young lady married to Prince Yu of the first rank, which made one unable to help but sigh. That Shingue must be crazy. Someone in the crowd that was watching the bustle whispered, "Isn't this like watching one's daughter jump into the fire pit by herself? Really sinful." "What do you know?" Another person disagreed. "I heard from my official Biao older brother that this eldest Shin young lady and Prince Yu had been secretly having an affair and her stomach was already pregnant. If it was not because she was pregnant with the imperial flesh and blood, she would have been drowned." "Ah, is what you said true?" When the surrounding people heard it, they were somewhat surprised as it was obvious that they did not know about this before. That person proudly shook his head. "Isn't it so?" One heard that during the returning banquet in the palace, all the civil and military officials saw it with their own eyes. So this eldest Shun young lady is not pitiful at all and only has herself to blame. It is indeed so. Getting pregnant before marriage is immoral. Really do not know shame. How could the second household of the Shun family teach such a daughter? General Shun is noble and virtuous, but it is really a disgrace to the family. What does this have to do with General Shun? General Shun is not in the Ding capital all year round and is still a daughter raised by the other 2 households. Everyone were talking at once, and their words were filled with disdain towards Shunqing. From the initial sympathy to the subsequent abuse, it seemed that it was just a matter of a short moment. Even Shingue and Ren Wanyun were poked in the back. The person in the crowd who had initially said that Shunqing was pregnant laughed quietly, turned around, and disappeared into the crowd. In the Shin residence, the matchmaker was grooming Shunqing. Ren Wanyun, who was standing behind Shunqing, tightly twisted the handkerchief in her hands, wishing that she could tear it into pieces. She had raised her daughter well, but now she had to watch helplessly as Shunqing jumped into the fire pit. There wasn't a mother who didn't love her children. For Ren Wanyun, all of this was like someone cutting her flesh with a knife. Unlike Ren Wanyun, Shunqing did not have such strong emotions. She quietly sat on her seat and let the matchmaker handle her. The matchmaker smiled and said, "Eldest young miss, this old woman is going to twist the dough for you. This is a little painful, so eldest young miss should endure it first. After a while, you will be a beautiful bride." It would have been better if she didn't say this, but once she said it, Ren Wanyun only felt pain in her heart and almost fainted. Shunqing looked at herself in the bronze mirror with a stupefied expression. If it wasn't for her eyes blinking from time to time, people would have thought that she was a lifeless corpse. The matchmaker's heart was somewhat apprehensive when she saw Shunqing's appearance. She took out a thin cotton thread from the box and started to twist the dough for Shunqing. This twisting of dough was to twist the face until it was white and clean, and it was indeed very painful. In the past, those eldest young ladies would always shout out a few words of pain. However, when the twisting thread landed on Shunqing's face, Shunqing was still expressionless, as if she was dead. Qinger, Ren Wanyun could not help but shed tears. Chapter 217. When the matchmaker saw this scene, she saw that the bride not only did not have the joy of a bride, but her entire body was filled with despair and her heart understood a little. Jixiang did not say anything else. She quickly put on her makeup and found an excuse to leave. There was only Ren Wanyun, Shunqing, and a few maids left in the room. Ren Wanyun's tears could not be stopped no matter what. In just a few short months' time, she had aged like those old matrons. There were many wrinkles on her face, and there were many more white hairs. There was no longer the well-rounded and astute appearance of a noblewoman in the past. "Mother, do not need to worry." It was Shun-Qing who opened her mouth first. Her voice was hoarse, and there was a strange tone to it. It seemed as if she was crying and laughing at the same time. She said, "Everything that I have suffered today will not be in vain. I will avenge myself." "Qinger, Mother has let you down." Ren Yuan went forward and hugged her. Shun-Qing woodenly allowed her to hug her and said in a hoarse voice, "Father and Mother are unable to help me. I will take revenge myself." Her tone was gloomy, but everyone could feel the soaring resentment. Shen Gui's cold eyes watching from the side and Ren Yun's scruples finally made them helpless in the face of Shun-Qing's marriage, and Shun-Qing finally hated her own parents. Ren Yun's heart was like being struck by lightning when she was hated by her own daughter. However, she knew that for things to come to this step, it was not without her reason. If she did not scheme against Shen Miao in the beginning, if she went out to take a look at that night in Wolong Temple, or if she did not write a letter to Prince Yu to explain that she was swapped, would Shun-Qing not have fallen into such a desperate situation? She forced a smile. "Qinger need not be afraid. Mother swears that Mother will definitely take revenge for you. Also, your second older brother will definitely let that little slut's reputation be ruined." In the hall outside of the Shen residence, old Shun Foreign sat on the chair in the middle with a calm face. Shen Yuanbo was half lying in her embrace and seemed to be somewhat afraid of the ruthless look on old Shun Foreign's face as he obediently dared not move. "Add what dowry?" Old Shen Foreign said. "Do such a shameless thing and still have the face to add dowry. Second brother, you raised such a good daughter." Old Shun Foreign loved vanity and loved to put on face outside. So this time Shun-Qing had such a big matter that could not be hidden from her. Knowing that all the civil and military officials knew about Shun-Qing's scandal, old Shen Foreign felt that her old face had been thrown away and naturally hated Shun-Qing and her mother. Shen Gui quickly complied and wished that he could divorce Ren Yun now. When Shun Xiu heard this, his expression was a little strange, as if he wanted to laugh. Most likely old Shun Foreign herself had forgotten that she was originally a songstress, and speaking of which, how much better could she be compared to Shun-Qing? She was just relying on the fact that she was the old foreign of the Shen family and really thought that she was a pure and noble young lady. Shen Wan did not make a sound, and Shen Rochio would not take the initiative to pounce on old Shun Foreign's anger. As for Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan, they stood at the same spot, as if they did not hear old Shen Foreign's words. After old Shun Foreign vented her anger, she said, "The dowry need not be too much. It is not worthwhile to spend my Shen family's money on this kind of girl." When the words were said, the contempt in Luo Shuiyan's eyes increased. Old Shen Foreign most favored the first household, and even though she valued males over females, but Shun-Qing also grew up in front of old Shen Foreign. Obviously knowing that Shun-Qing's marriage to Prince Yu residence was a tragic beginning and giving more money would perhaps make Shun-Qing live more comfortably, but one did not think that old Shen Foreign was so stingy and ruthless. Indeed, she was a prostitute that could not be seen in public. Shen Gui complied again. He had always had the attitude of a filial son. When old Shun Foreign saw that he was so obedient, the expression on her face eased up a little and her eyes fell onto Shen Xian. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly heard Shen Yu exclaim, "Second older brother?" Chapter 218. Everyone followed Shen Yu's line of sight and saw a young male walking in from the door. He was dressed in a stone green robe, and this male was considered upright. Upon closer inspection, there was a 60 to 70% similarity to Shen Gui, but there was a hint of arrogance between his brows. This person was not anyone else but the second household of the Shen family, Shen Gui's eldest son, Shen Yuan. In the second household, Shen Yuan had always been intelligent and quick-witted. Compared to Shan Xiu's military achievements, which were obtained step by step, Shen Yuan was much more of a genius. When he was young, he obtained first place in the imperial examinations, and his ranking was not bad. Afterwards, he obtained the appreciation of nobles and embarked on an official career. But previously, he had to be a low-ranking official outside for 3 years, and this year was the last year. He was supposed to stay in the Ding capital to be an official after the end of the year. Who knew that Shen Qing would meet with such an incident, and he must have rushed back just in time to see his younger sister's wedding day. Even Shun Yu could not help but hide behind Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan patted Shun Yu's back and his gaze landed on Shen Yuan. Towards Shen Yuan, the people in the Shen residence were more or less fearful. Perhaps it was because Shen Yuan had an official title at such a young age, or perhaps it was because he was young and mature, which made others feel that he had a deep scheming mind. In short, Shen Yu and the previous Shen Miao were very afraid of him. The happiest person was none other than old Shen Foreign. She was pleasantly surprised as she waved at Shen Yuan. Yuaner? Shen Yuan Bo, who was in old Shen Foreign's embrace, also called out crisply, second older brother. Shen Yuan then smiled and went forward to greet old Shen Foreign and called out, grandmother. He then touched Shen Yuan Bo's head. Yuan Bo grew taller again. One fear that Yuaner had rushed back. Chen Rochio smiled and said, one must be tired from the journey. Do you want to take a rest first? Now that Ran Wan Yun was not around, she was the one in charge of the Shen residence and naturally took out the air of a matriarch. Shen Yuan turned his head and looked at Chen Rochio. One did not know why, but Chen Rochio's heart sank and a sense of dread arose. After not seeing for a year, Shen Yuan became more and more unfathomable. Chen Rochio had always been intelligent, and when the children were young, they had tried to trip Shen Yuan up, but Shen Yuan was unexpectedly intelligent, and in the end, the one who suffered was Chen Rochio. Chen Rochio thought that Ren Wan Yun was fortunate to have given birth to such an intelligent son. So even though she was dissatisfied with the second household, Chen Rochio did not dare to completely annoy the other. No need, Shen Yuan said. I came back this time to see younger sister get married. If we rest now, I'm afraid there won't be enough time. Speaking of Shen Qing, the atmosphere in the room became somewhat awkward, and old Shen Foreign did not respond. Shen Yuan was not moved in the slightest, and his gaze looked towards Shen Qiu's side without any hesitation. The person standing there was Shen Miao. It's been a while. Fifth sister has changed a lot. He narrowed his eyes. Sure enough, a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Fifth sister has changed so much that I can't even recognize her anymore. Shen Miao calmly looked back at him. Shen Yuan's gaze was dark and probing, as if it was a poisonous snake crawling in the mud, unhurriedly entangling with a cold air that made one's blood run cold. She smiled gently. Second older brother is still the same. Chen Rochio's gaze paused for a moment, and Shen Yu was somewhat rejoicing in others' misfortune. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyin coincidentally frowned at the same time, but Shen Qiu smiled and said, not bad. From second younger brother's look, there is no change. This made Shen Yuan to look at Shen Qiu before saying meaningfully, did not think that fifth younger sister and eldest brother's relationship would be so good. Biological siblings. Naturally the relationship is good. Shen Miao smiled gently. Does second older brother not go and see eldest sister now? One think that it would be in time to add to the dowry. Chapter 219. Shen Yuan looked deeply at Shen Miao and said with a smile, correct? I will go now. Finishing, he then bowed towards old Shen Foreign, grandmother. I will go take a look at younger sister first. As the eldest brother, I am not by younger sister's side, and now that she is about to get married, one do not know if she would be bullied in the future. I can only speak a few words to her, and will leave first. Finishing, he turned around and did not look at everyone as he left in quick steps. From the beginning to the end, he did not say a single word to Shen Gue. In the past, even though Shen Gue and Shen Yuan's relationship was not particularly close, but they were after all father and son. Shen Gue valued Shen Yuan and took care of him, and Shen Yuan treated Shen Gue with respect. Today's attitude was obviously a problem. Shen Gue's face was livid as he clenched his fists. Old Shen Foreign looked at him resentfully and felt somewhat depressed in her heart. She waved her hands and said, help me back to the room. Old Shen Foreign did not intend to go to today's wedding banquet. From old Shen Foreign's point of view, most of the guests that were invited to the wedding banquet were high-ranking officials and nobles, and knew the ins and outs of this marriage very clearly. If she were to go and embarrass her old face, it would not be a good fortune. so she immediately let Zhang Mama help her back to the room. After old Shan Foreign left, the hall became somewhat awkward. Xin Yu glanced at Shan Miao and asked, "Fifth younger sister, what did you gift for eldest sister's dowry?" "Just some jewelry," Xin Miao said lightly. Xin Yu made an "oh" sound and saw that she did not want to bother with it. Even though she was angry in her heart, she did not show it on her face in front of Shin Xian and wife, and quietly stood by Chen Rochio's side. Xinwan looked at Shin Xian, eldest brother. "Now that Yuaner is back, what should be done? What does Yuaner's return have to do with me?" Shin Xian said in puzzlement, "I cannot even manage my own Jiao Jiao and Chio'er. Why would I care about number 2's son? Number 3, your third household is sparse in numbers. If there is nothing, then help number 2. After all, you are all brothers," he said earnestly. Shin Xian, this person looked honest and sincere, but in fact his words were like that of a poisonous snake. This point could be seen from the Marquis of Lin on Xieding, who had been dealing with him for decades, but never had any good words with him. When these words were said, Shun Wan did not have time to express anything when Chen Rochio was so angry that her nails dug into her palms. Everyone knew that the third household had few descendants, and other than Xinyu, Chen Rochio did not even have a son. Even though Shun Wan had deep feelings for Chen Rochio, but old Shin Foreign had long wanted to bring in concubines for Shin Wan because Chen Rochio was unable to give birth to a son. Shun Xian was stabbing a knife into Chen Rochio's heart. "That's right, sister-in-law." Luo Shuiyin also smiled and said, "Don't always worry about other people's matters. I know that the two of you are kind, but it's time for you to think about your own matters. Yu Jie is already so big. In the future when she marries, she won't have a brother to help her. Unavoidably, it will be a bit too weak." Xin Miao's eyes were filled with smiles. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyin were not good at fighting in the inner courtyard, but the battlefield experience had made them more sensitive than others. Xinwan and wife wanted to sow discord, but were muddled by Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyin's 4 taels of weight. "Younger sister, let us also go and see eldest younger sister." Shun Xiao patted Shan Miao's shoulder. "Your additional dowry is still at my place." Shin Miao knew that Shin Xiao had something to say to her, and nodded her head in agreement. After greeting the few of them, she walked towards the western courtyard with Shin Xiao. "Younger sister, Shin Yuan has enmity towards you," Shin Xiao said. "I know. He could possibly know the reason for the matter." Shin Xiao was somewhat anxious. He is a person who likes to do mischief in the dark and is quite scheming. One fear that he would take revenge for Shun Qing and think of ways to harm you. You stay in the residence these days and do not go out." Chapter 220. Shin Xiao had a natural hostility towards Shin Yuan, and this was also an unclear reason. In fact, Shin Yuan and Shun Xiao did not have any grudges, but Shun Xiao just did not see Shin Yuan as an eyesore. Perhaps some people were born to be enemies. "Eldest brother, if he really had the intention to harm me, no matter how well I hide, he would be able to think of a way. Moreover, what can he do? Don't worry, since he's such a cautious person, he definitely wouldn't just randomly find someone to kill me. It's definitely a trick." When it came to tricks, who could compare to her, who had already died once? "Younger sister, you are still young and do not understand the dangers of some matters." Shin Xiao was even more anxious. "Shin Yuan is not a good person. If you are so careless, you will suffer." "Eldest brother, do not worry." Shun Miao looked at Shin Xiao. "Counter soldiers with arms and water with earth. If there is really anything, is there not still eldest brother?" She smiled coldly, but there was a sentence in her heart that she did not say to Shin Xiao. In the previous lifetime, Shun Xiao's death was definitely not an accident. She did not know who it was from the second household, or the third household, but these people would not be able to escape. Even if Shin Yuan did not take action against her, she would not let Shin Yuan have an easy time. Just treat it as repaying the debt from the previous lifetime. In the Kai Yun Yuan of the eastern courtyard, when Ran Wan Yun saw Shen Yuan, she went forward to hug him and sobbed. The fear and helplessness that she had these days finally broke out the moment she saw Shen Yuan. Ren Wan Yun choked with sobs and was unable to say a word. Even Shun Qing, who was like a puppet, when she saw Shen Yuan, there was a flash of brilliance in her despairing eyes. Shen Yuan comforted Ren Wanyun for a while before going forward to touch Shan Qing's head. Shen Qing endured it and finally burst into tears. As she cried, she said, "Second older brother, why did you not come back earlier?" When Ren Wanyun saw Shen Qing crying, she also cried. In a moment, the cries in the room shook the heavens, and it was very miserable. Those who did not know would have thought that it was a funeral and not a happy event. A haze flashed in Shen Yuan's eyes. He had grown up in the general's residence, and even though the most powerful people in the general's residence were Shen Xian and his wife, but from what he saw, the two of them were only martial men who only knew how to fight, and the daughter they gave birth to was also a fool. These people were easily played by the second household in the palm of their hands. As for his mother and younger sister, they had always lived in elegance and wealth. In comparison, that Shen Miao was like a daughter of a small family from the countryside. But now, that nouveau riche idiot had actually forced Ren Wanyun and Chen Qing to such an extent. To Shen Yuan, this was undoubtedly a provocation. Ren Wanyun had clearly stated the ins and outs of the matter in the letter that she wrote to him. From Shen Yuan's point of view, even though Ren Wanyun's plan was not perfect, but for Shen Miao to be able to counterattack and even escape safely, it was somewhat out of his expectations. "Mother, don't cry." Shen Yuan's expression did not change because of this. He said, "There is no use crying. Yuan Ren Wanyun grabbed his hand. "You are the one with the best ideas. You will definitely be able to save your younger sister, right?" Hearing that, Shen Qing also looked at Shen Yuan expectantly. "Second older brother, I beg you to help me. I do not want to marry that person. Originally, I should not marry him. Second older brother, help me, help me." Even though Shen Qing was somewhat afraid of this older brother of hers, but since young when she was bullied, Shen Yuan would help her win it back without batting an eyelid. Towards Shen Yuan, Shen Qing both loved and hated him. Now that Shen Yuan was her life-saving straw, naturally she had to grab hold of it. "Cannot." Shen Yuan's expression was so calm that it was almost cold. The marriage has already reached such a stage, and there is no possibility of turning it around. One cannot harm everyone because of younger sister's willfulness. So younger sister must marry this marriage. Chapter 221. Just as the words were spoken, Shen Qing collapsed onto the ground, and after a pause, she finally cried out in despair. Her actions ruined the makeup she had just put on. Her face was covered in dirt, but she didn't notice it at all. "Is there really no other way?" Ren Wanyun murmured. "Even though there is no way to destroy this marriage, but my Shen Yuan's younger sister would definitely not be schemed against like this." Shen Yuan coldly said, "For Shen Miao to become so smart in one night, it is either that there is someone guiding her from behind or she was pretending previously. It would be better if there was someone guiding her, but for her to pretend for more than 10 years, it is just too scary." That little slut seemed to have been possessed. Seeing that the matter was about to succeed, she escaped. "Yuan, that slut cannot be left alive." Ren Wanyun gritted her teeth, thinking that everything today is all thanks to that slut. "I can't wait to eat her flesh and drink her blood." Currently, mother cannot deal with her unscrupulously because of eldest Bo's family. Heard that eldest Bo will be staying in the Ding capital for another half a year so that Shen Miao's backing will be longer. Shen Yuan glanced at Shen Qing. Ren Wanyun's body trembled. "But one cannot just let it go like this." "Naturally, one cannot let it go," Shen Yuan said. "In this world, no matter how big the backing is, there will be a day when it falls. Since Shen Miao had a backer, it would be good to let her backer fall. It is also good for eldest Bo's family to stay in the Ding capital." A smile floated on Shen Yuan's lips. "Saves me the trouble of going over one by one." Ren Wanyun's heart was somewhat frightened for no reason, but looking at Shen Qing, who was paralyzed on the ground, a burst of anger immediately burst out. "Yuan, one must not let that little slut off." "Do not worry." Shen Yuan's gaze was gloomy. "To play tricks under my eyelids, I will return the original. Since Shen Miao harmed mother and younger sister, then I will let the first household of the Shen family leave Shen Miao alone." Leaving one person to slowly play, that would be called interesting. He laughed slowly. Qing's bridal makeup had to be redone after all. The matchmaker was surprised to find that this time, Qing's expression was much more lively compared to the previous lifeless one. At the very least, she finally seemed to have some human aura. When Xinyu and Xin Miao came over to add to the dowry, Qing even smiled at both of them. It was just that Qing's body was somewhat swollen due to her pregnancy. These days, she had been very anxious. Even if she had put on makeup, she still looked old and haggard. Such a smile not only didn't have the loveliness of a young girl, it also looked somewhat strange and terrifying. "Big sister, you must take good care of yourself," Xinyu said with red eyes. "Definitely." Qing complied and looked at Shen Miao before speaking in a hoarse voice. "I will definitely repay fifth younger sister's kindness to me." Even though he was smiling, the viciousness in his words made Xinyu could not help but shiver. "I'll be waiting." Shen Miao also smiled. The matters after that became natural. Old Shen Foreign avoided meeting Qing, and Qing could only speak to Ren Wanyun. Because this marriage was not a glorious matter, everyone in the Shen residence was somewhat embarrassed. Those celebrations that were used for blessings were done carelessly. At the end, when it was time to board the wedding sedan, it was Shen Yuan who carried Qing onto the sedan. And the most embarrassing thing was that Prince Yu of the first rank did not come to pick up the bride and only sent a housekeeper. When Shen Yuan was carried by Qing, the commoners that surrounded the general residence's entrance were pointing at them, and the conversation was faintly discernible to everyone's ears. They were all saying that Qing did not know shame and was fickle. Even if Ren Wanyun and Shen Yuan were angry in their hearts, they could not kill all the commoners. Chapter 222. When the sedan finally left, Shen Yuan returned to the entrance of the Shun residence and stood by Shan Miao's side. Looking at the sedan leaving, he said, "Fifth younger sister seems to be very calm. The one who is marrying is not me, so why would I not be calm?" Shen Miao answered, "Does fifth younger sister know that once Qinger marries, what will be the future? What will be the future is not something that you and I can decide." Shen Yuan did not seem to have heard Shen Miao's words as he spoke. The matters of the world are ever-changing. Sometimes one would be in a dilemma, but one would not know that in the future there would be light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes one would look at the road in front of them, but one cannot say for sure. His voice suddenly sank. One would be pushing oneself into a dead end. "Exactly." Shen Miao smiled. No one can say for sure about the matters of the world. One would have fortune and misfortune at any moment, and one cannot say for sure that there would be no road in front. Shen Yuan finally turned his head and looked at Shen Miao. His pair of eyes looked up and down, making one feel uncomfortable. What made one uncomfortable was his words. "I only found out today that fifth younger sister is an intelligent person." Shen Miao did not comment but heard a loud roar from behind. "Younger sister." Shen Xiu hurriedly ran over and looked at Shen Yuan vigilantly before speaking to Shen Miao. "Younger sister, do not run around. There are many wicked people outside, and one may know a person's face but not their heart. Who knows what kind of wicked moves they would make?" Shen Yuan looked at Shen Xiu and smiled again. Eldest brother really knows how to joke. Moreover, fifth younger sister is so intelligent that one fear that no one would be able to scheme against her. As for the saying, one may know a person's face but not their heart, perhaps there might be someone who is more suitable. Shen Xiu sneered. "My younger sister has a pure and kind nature and cannot be compared to those treacherous villains. As her older brother, I naturally have to worry about her from time to time. Else those jackals and wolves that have studied would eat her up in one mouthful, and she would not even have a place to cry. Younger sister, let us sit in the horse carriage to the residence of the prince of first rank." The people of the Shen family also wanted to follow to the residence of the prince of first rank to participate in the wedding banquet, but Shan Xiu's words had really expressed his distrust of Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan looked at the back view of the two siblings, leaving, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. The Shen family's wedding sedan had to travel through more than half of the Ding capital, and it had to go through the most prosperous streets. After all, it was a marriage bestowed by the Empress, so naturally the extravagance had to be grand. Even if everyone knew that this marriage was not honorable, they still wanted to make it known to everyone. On the busiest section of the road, at a seat by the window of the Kuaihua building, the white-dressed man was still waving his folding fan as usual, looking out of the window at the mighty wedding procession as if he was watching a show. The wedding procession sprinkled copper coins as they walked, and the commoners who were watching the bustle rushed forward to snatch the coins. It seemed that the procession was in a jubilant mood. However, only the people in the palanquin knew what they were feeling. This marriage of the Shun family is quite extravagant. Ji Yushu played with the silver in his hands and said, "It has been a long time since I have seen such a lively marriage. I wonder if there will be such a grand occasion when I marry Miss Xiaoyao in the future. I'm still thinking about that Miss Peony of yours." Gaoyang looked at him. "Yushu, I remember that you still have a fiancé. Does that fiancé of yours know that you are so attentive to Miss Peony?" "Already said that it was a joke for a child's marriage. Who knows what she looks like? I will not marry. I only love Miss Peony. If Miss Peony is not good, then the fifth young lady of the Shen family is also not bad." He laughed and looked at the person opposite. "Third older brother Xie. Am I right?" Xie Jingxing glanced at him and was too lazy to speak. Gaoyang sneered. "Shen Miao? One fear that you would not have the life to marry." "What? Don't say that other young lady is like a demon. I only value her intelligence, sensitivity, boldness, and meticulousness." Ji Yushu was not convinced. Moreover, "She looks not bad. Heard that previously she liked that Prince Dingbrat. How can a good young lady's eyesight be bad? Can Prince Ding be compared to me? Really?" Gaoyang looked at Ji Yushu. "You are really good. But this Shun young lady of yours seems to be in trouble." "What trouble?" Ji Yushu asked. "Shen Qing's older brother, Shun Yuan, has returned." Gaoyang gloated. Shen Miao had tricked Shen Qing into the residence of the prince of first rank, so Shen Yuan would definitely not let Shen Miao off. This Shen Yuan is not someone easy to deal with. In the second household of the general residence, one feared that even Shen Gue would not be as experienced and far-sighted as Shen Yuan. Moreover, this Shen Yuan is the most vicious and merciless. When he takes action, he would not be soft. Shen Yuan does not seem to be an ordinary person. Ji Yushu suddenly thought of something. Is he not Fu Xiuyi's people? Just a small minion. Xie Jingxing suddenly opened his mouth and lazily swept his eyes below. A jumping clown. "You all even put him in your eyes." "Huh. You are still this arrogant." Gaoyang asked, "What is next?" Wait for others to start, and then pick up the scraps." Chapter 223. After the wedding sedan had traversed more than half of the Ding capital, it finally entered the residence of Prince Yu. There were already a number of guests at the entrance of Prince Yu residence. Even though Prince Yu was usually vicious and cruel, he was after all a member of the imperial family, and the ministers still had to come. Emperor Wen Hui and the princes did not come, but the palace still sent people over to send gifts. Most likely these days, Emperor Wen Hui's attitude made Prince Yu very dissatisfied. Today when the people from the palace came, they did not express to let the other party drink a cup of wedding wine or express their gratitude. When the eunuch that was sent by the palace saw this scene, he sneered in his heart. Perhaps to others, they were just a bunch of grass eunuchs, but in fact, these people were the closest to the emperor's side. There must be some problems between Emperor Wen Hui and Prince Yu. Prince Yu was still acting like before, but Emperor Wen Hui was no longer as tolerant as before. Today, Prince Yu's actions would only make Emperor Wen Hui angrier. After the people from the palace left, Prince Yu then turned his head to instruct the servants to continue welcoming the guests. Today, Prince Yu was wearing a bright red wedding robe, and the fabric and embroidery of the robe were undoubtedly very fine. It was just that on his body, one of the trousers was empty, and it looked somewhat awkward. And he was born with a somewhat fierce look, but today he had a face full of smiles. One did not know who he was smiling at, but it made the people who saw his smile have a layer of goosebumps. The Shen family had also arrived. Shen Gue and Shun Wan had already gone to find familiar colleagues to chat. Shen Gue had already broken a jar, and since everyone knew about Shen Qing's scandal, it was better to take advantage of the fact that Shun Qing was married into Prince Yu residence and have a marriage relationship with the first prince residence to add some bricks and tiles to his career. As for Shen Wan, there was no need to mention about it. Both of them were ambitious people and naturally would not miss such a good opportunity. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan sat at one end as they sat at the bride's maiden home. They looked down on Sheng Gui's attitude. On the contrary, Ren Yuan also came and sat at the side with Shen Yuan. She had carefully made up and covered her red eyes. She was afraid of angering Prince Yu, so she forced a smile, but no matter how one looked at that smile, there was a trace of anger. Shen Yuan did not have any expression, and occasionally, his eyes swept across Shen Miao with profound meaning. Shen Xiu noticed Shen Yuan's gaze and would angrily block it back. Luo Shuiyan noticed it and asked thoughtfully, "Brat, what happened between you and Shen Yuan?" Shen Xian and wife did not know of the grudges between Shen Qing and Shen Miao. Thus Shen Xiu hemmed and hawed, "I do not see eye to eye with him, and there is some friction." "You are really good." Luo Shuiyan glared at him. "To fight with someone who has no martial arts." "Shen Xiu, how old are you this year?" Shen Xiu looked at Shen Miao for help, but Shen Miao pretended not to know and looked at the teacup without speaking. The guests in this room complimented each other, and it looked quite peaceful. In a blink of an eye, it was the time for Shen Qing and Prince Yu to bow to heaven and earth to get married. Shen Qing's head was covered with a veil, and she was supported by her maids, Chun Tao and Shueli. After bowing to the heavens and the earth, Shun Gui's expression was very awkward. Prince Yu of the first rank looked at him with a gloomy gaze, and to let Prince Yu bow to them couple, it was a horrifying matter. Sure enough, the housekeeper of Prince Yu residence arrogantly said, "His Highness Prince Yu's body is inconvenient. This ceremony to the parents, let's dispense with it." When these words were spoken, the hall was silent for a moment. Ren Yuan gritted her teeth and the muscles on her cheeks trembled. Since the heavens and earth were already bowed, why was it that when it was the turn to bow to the parents, Prince Yu only remembered that his body was inconvenient? This was clearly Prince Yu not acknowledging Shen Qing and deliberately embarrassed Shen Gui and Ren Yuan. Even though Shen Gui also felt his face burning hot, but he had always been a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Fearing that Prince Yu would blame him, he immediately said, "Since His Highness is not well, then let's dispense with it." Chapter 224. Some of the younger guests could not help but sneer and did not conceal their laughter, making Ren Yuan almost rush forward to reason with them. Just as she could not bear it any longer, Shen Yuan suddenly reached out to grab her arm and gently shook his head at her. Only then did Ren Yuan calm down. Shen Yuan withdrew his hand, and his gaze landed on Shen Gui, who was smiling flatteringly in the distance, and there was a moment of haze in his expression. "Number two's actions are too shameful," Luo Shuiyan said in disdain. "Allow others to bully one's own daughter like this? I originally thought that he was only greedy for riches and did not think that he would be so insane." Shen Xian shook his head and said in a disappointed tone, "How did number two become like this? We are doing well but are despised at the same time. Really unlucky," Shen Xiu said unhappily. At the other end, Shen Yu's family were also somewhat ashamed. Even though Shen Wan was also ambitious in his career, he was not as brazen as Shen Gui, and Shen Roqiu held herself to be noble and virtuous because she was from a scholarly family. After all, they were all Shen family, and Shen Gui's attitude made them feel ashamed. After Prince Yu humiliated Shen Gui, he seemed to be very satisfied with everyone's disdain towards the Shen family. When the husband and wife bowed to each other, he deliberately dragged out the time. One did not know if Shen Miao's eyesight was blurry, but when the bride walked past them, her body seemed to be trembling. When a prince of first rank married, even the nuptial chamber was saved. Shen Qing was pregnant, and if there was any accident in the nuptial chamber, no one would be able to bear the crime of murdering an heir of the imperial family. After Shen Qing was sent to the nuptial chamber, Prince Yu was still outside feasting with the guests and drinking and having fun. "Congratulations, Your Highness, Prince of first rank." The ministers came up to toast. Same to Prince Yu. Prince Yu also replied. On the surface, Prince Yu was really happy today and actually shared the joy with the ministers, but Shen Miao did not ignore the cold expression that he occasionally swept over. Prince Yu had suffered a setback at her hands and would always think of getting it back. As their gazes came closer, Prince Yu raised his cup to him and suddenly made an obscene gesture as he licked his lips. Xin Miao only looked at such a malicious expression calmly. It was Shan Xiu who was at the side who saw her staring at a distance and followed her gaze. What is younger sister looking at? Prince Yu of the first rank had already turned his head to drink with others, and Xin Xiu did not see anything. Xin Miao stood up. It is somewhat stuffy, and I will go to the door to breathe. I'll go with you, Xin Xiu quickly said. No need. With Imoqing and the rest guarding outside, I will not go far and will be at the door. Xin Miao rejected him and got up to leave the table. Prince Yu residence was very big, and Imoqing was standing guard in the garden outside. When he saw her coming out, he immediately followed. Xin Miao did not go far and stood at the same spot, looking at the southwest corner of Prince Yu residence in a daze. Then, a voice came from behind. Fifth sister. Xin Miao turned her head back and did not know when Xin Yuan had followed and smiled at her. Xin Yuan's smile was different from Fu Xiuyi's gentleness and also different from Shan Xiu's simple and honest smile. It was not like Ji Yushu's mischievous smile. His smile seemed to contain other meanings, making one very uncomfortable. When he stared into other people's eyes, it was like a venomous snake sizing up its prey. That gloomy and cold aura lingered. Xin Yuan was the most fearful opponent in the second household of the Xin family. The banquet was only halfway and fifth sister came out on her own. I thought that fifth sister had some secret and wanted to play behind the older brother's back. There was a hidden meaning in his words. Xin Miao looked at the flowers in the garden. It was already the 12th month of the winter, and the previously flourishing flowers had long withered. The branches were bare and there was nothing left, only the heavy snow on the branches, giving off a cold and desolate feeling. She said, "Then why did second older brother follow out? To peep at my secret?" Chapter 225. I actually have the intention to peep, Xin Yuan said. It is just that younger sister hides it too tightly that older brother is also helpless. It's just that I feel that you and I can be considered siblings, so if there's a chance, I should give you a few words of advice. Xin Miao turned her head and stared at him without blinking. One would like to hear the details. Actually, when I returned to the capital this time, I discovered that fifth sister had changed quite a bit. It was as if she had become another person. Maybe it was because fifth sister had grown up, or maybe it was because she had someone to teach her. But I, your second brother, have walked more roads than fifth sister, so I can see some things more clearly than you. He paused and slightly looked towards the wedding hall. Over there, the sounds of people toasting, thanking, and flattering could be heard even from far away. Xin Yuan said, "Qing is getting married today. Does fifth younger sister feel happy?" To be honest, it's very satisfying. Xin Miao smiled. A stern look flashed in Shan Yuan's eyes before he smiled. Fifth younger sister really doesn't know how to restrain herself. The enmity between you and Qi has already reached the point of no rest until one party is dead. Now that you have sent Qing to the prince's residence, you think that this is victory. So fifth younger sister is after all still a child. He touched Shan Miao's head, as if he was really an intimate elder brother, but Qing had entered Prince Yu residence, so there might be a chance to turn things around. After enduring this period of time, it is hard to say what will happen to Qing in the future, but for fifth younger sister, one fear that every step will be difficult. Xin Miao did not speak and only heard Shan Yuan speaking again. If I was fifth younger sister, I would not have given Qing a chance and would have eliminated the opponent early on and take her life. The so-called acting out of spite and the so-called making the other party suffer more pain, it was only to increase one's future troubles. He looked at Xin Miao and smiled warmly. One think that you are still young and do not understand the logic of tolerating evil. If it's an opponent, it's best to take his life. Xin Miao quietly looked at Xin Yuan in front of her, and her heart was slightly moved. Xin Yuan was indeed the smartest person in the second household. He did not look at the process and only looked at the results. If someone offended him, he would use the simplest method to take their life. His methods were ruthless and direct, but there were no repercussions. Such a person was calm and rational, and would not be affected by external factors. It was impossible to deal with such a person by infuriating him. She smiled and said, "Second brother is right. After all, I'm still young. I'm not as cold as second brother." When such sarcastic words fell into Shen Yuan's ears, Shen Yuan smiled without a care, but following that, he heard Shan Miao's faint voice sounding, "Even though I am not as cold as second older brother, but there is one point that I and second older brother are the same. I also do not like to leave behind future troubles. Do you think that if big sister marries into the prince's mansion, will she be able to turn things around?" Shen Yu stared at her. "You think not?" "Would I?" Shen Miao asked. She had always been calm and obedient when she spoke. However, this question of, "Will you?" was filled with dense provocation and ridicule. That kind of arrogant ridicule caused the usually emotionless Shen Yuan's pupils to suddenly shrink. After Shen Miao finished speaking, she chuckled and no longer looked at Shen Yuan before turning around to leave the garden and walked back to the wedding hall. Would Shen Qing be able to turn things around or not? Her lips slightly hooked up, and that kind of joy that came from the heart made Mo Qing, who was following behind, surprised for a moment. After following beside Shen Miao for so long, Mo Qing gradually became clear. He had seen Shen Miao's ruthlessness, and most of the time, it was Shen Miao who was calmly giving orders. She would occasionally smile, but even that smile seemed to have a touch of majesty. However, at this moment, her eyebrows were curved as if she was extremely happy, but one did not know what matter could make her so happy. Mo Qing looked at Shen Yuan, who was still in the garden, and his heart was puzzled. Shen Miao was able to be this happy after speaking a few words to Shen Yuan? Chapter 226. No matter how grand the banquet was, there would eventually be a time for it to disperse. When the wine was hot, the guests left in twos and threes, and Shen Miao also stepped onto the horse back to the residence. On the horse, Luo Shuiyin remained silent. One did not know what she thought of as she held Shen Miao's hands and asked, "Jiao Jiao, what kind of man do you admire?" It was somewhat out of line for a mother to ask an unmarried daughter, but most likely it was Shen Qing's marriage today that touched Luo Shuiyin's heart. She had been out on expeditions all year round, and now that she thought about it, she did not know what Shen Miao was thinking in her heart. She only knew that Shen Miao had once admired Prince Ding, and Luo Shuiyin had seen Prince Ding before. He was indeed a dragon and phoenix among men and had elegance. It was just that such a person's mind would not be short, so how much could he see about emotional matters? To marry such a person, one might not be able to obtain happiness. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before looking at Luo Shuiyin with a smile. "What kind of person does mother wish for me to marry?" Luo Shuiyin did not think that Shen Miao would ask her back, and for a moment ignored the fact that when Shen Miao faced this question, there was no trace of shyness, and it was as if she was asking a simple question. Luo Shuiyin thought about it before saying, "Mother hopes that you can marry a person of upright character. It is best that his official position is not too high, wealth is not too much, ambition is not too strong, and the residence should not be too complicated. Power and wealth, mother and your father will give it to you. If one's ambition is small, then they will truly love you. The residence is simple, and after you marry over, you will be able to live a quiet life. In short, one must sincerely respect and love you." Shen Miao's eyes drooped down as she smiled. Luo Shuiyin and Shen Xion's hope did not seem to have changed. They hoped that Shen Miao could marry an ordinary person, and the most request was nothing more than to love and love her. Unfortunately, her heart was blinded by lard in her previous life. There were thousands of males in the world, but she chose the one that did not love her the most. But Luo Shuiyin also smiled as she spoke. "Mother knows that young ladies like you all would not love this kind of person the most. Most likely what you all like are those people that can be seen in a crowd. When mother was at your age, she also loved those young and handsome heroes, but after marrying your father, mother did not regret it. As such, I will listen to mother," Shen Miao softly said. Luo Shuiyin was stunned. "What?" Shen Miao looked at her and said word by word, "Isn't it mother's hope to marry an ordinary person who can love and respect me? In this way, when I'm of marriageable age in the future, I'll marry someone like him." Luo Shuiyin held Shen Miao's hand, and her heart suddenly felt strange. The young girl in front of him had an obedient appearance, and a docile temperament. She was a completely different person from the rebellious and willful past. Whatever she said, Shen Miao would agree to it. One should be very happy to have such an obedient daughter, but one did not know why Luo Shuiyan was not happy at all. It was as if the face in front of him should not have such a docile expression. She should be a little more arrogant, a little more rebellious, a little more lively, and not so submissive and calm as she was now. It made people feel inexplicably sad. Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao into her embrace and whispered, "Even so, at your age, it is not too much to like any kind of person. Mother knows that anyone who can be placed in our Jiao Jiao's heart must be a good person. Our Jiao Jiao is so good, so he will definitely love and respect Jiao Jiao. If Jiao Jiao likes him, even if he is not an ordinary person, as long as he treats Jiao Jiao well, Mother will not stop you." Shen Miao buried her head in Luo Shuiyan's embrace, and her voice was so soft that it could not be heard, thanking Mother. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.